Welcome to podcast number 341 of Get Paid for Your Pad. The topic for today is setting up an accessibility-friendly Airbnb, something that I've never discussed on this podcast. So I'm excited to dive in with Margie Schrader. She's a member of our Short-Term Rental Profit Academy, and she's also the founder of Xenia Hospitality. Margie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jasper. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Bloomington, Indiana. Sorry, you can sometimes hear cats or daughters in the background, but all is well. How about you?
That's fine. That's fine. Well, it's great. It's very hot here in Barcelona. Summer has started, so it's getting really, really warm. But let's start with a little background about you. How did you get into Airbnb? Where is your business located, and what does your business look like?
Well, I got into Airbnb because a friend of mine who is a local home builder he had a home that he was interested in Airbnb-ing, and at the same time, my husband and I were thinking about turning our garage into a granny flat and Airbnb-ing that maybe. I had only stayed at a couple Airbnbs. I didn't really know a lot about it, but this friend of mine said, I'm thinking about doing this. Would you be interested in managing it? And I said, absolutely. I was kind of looking for something new to do. And that was May of 2018. And May is a big month here where I am, which is Bloomington, Indiana, home of Indiana University. And graduation is in May, and graduation is the biggest weekend here in terms of for rentals, hotels, short-term rentals, everybody. So we started in May with one, and then last year we added the same friend home builder. We added two more, and then I also have another, I reached out to a different homeowner, and so I'm working with someone else as well. And anyway, I have five going now.
Wow, with, that's awesome.
A couple more in the hopper, maybe.
Nice. And how has it been for you during the whole COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been terrible. The business was terrible for a little bit, but there was so much else to think about and figure out, just with everything going on, that almost felt like a side thing. So right away, right as it was looking like it was going to come, we were talking about it in the Profit Academy, and I was thinking about it, and I was doing things like buying some extra hand sanitizer and some UVC air filters. I didn't really anticipate that travel would be completely cut off for a little bit. And when that happened, I talked right away to Lauren, the homeowner of 4 of my homes, and said, I wonder if you would be interested in letting people stay in our homes for free who cannot go home because they have at-risk family members who are medical professionals. So anybody kind of who's working at the hospital but has somebody at home that they would be particularly concerned about taking COVID home to. So that's what we did. And actually we had somebody in all of the properties for a while. And now we still have one person who's just staying. He's an ER nurse. And then we have another. We got in with a traveling CT tech, and he's staying in another one, and also, but he's paying now, which is nice.
Right.
So we're coming back, but it's been a slow return. We've certainly stepped up our cleaning and disinfecting procedures, which were really diligent to begin with. But we follow the Airbnb guidelines, and everything that I learn about from the CDC. We take it really, really seriously. And we have a day in between and all of that. So I've learned a lot. And we've got 2 rentals going again, and the rest all have longer term people. We have 2 Airbnbs functioning as a normal Airbnb.
Right.
Yeah.
So how's your market? How's it looking right now? Because what we're seeing is that the urban markets are still struggling, but the drive to destinations, the destinations for they're popular with domestic travelers. We see a big surge in demand right now. Some of our students actually are expanding. Some of them are saying they are fully occupied in those smaller markets. So how I imagine Bloomingdale, Indiana, might also be a drive-to destination. No.
Yeah, Bloomington is. We had, before COVID, my guests were either parents usually coming to Indiana University either to visit their students or with their students, and then also people coming from Chicago, Cincinnati, Louisville, kind of the nearby Indianapolis, nearby metro areas for a getaway, because we have a lot of great nature and restaurants, and we're just a really vibrant little town, a lot of culture. So now, that's a great question. I'm trying to get a hold of, I'm having a lot of people flying in. I'm not seeing a particular pattern. I've got people coming in to see family. I've got people, same kind of thing, coming from nearby for a little getaway. I haven't had anybody from my town stay in one of the Airbnbs yet. So that's been interesting to me. I was kind of expecting that maybe I would, but that hasn't happened. So it's a mix, and I would say it's not all the way back for me yet.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, hopefully in the near future, it will recover to pre-crisis levels. Now, let's talk about accessibility, because I know you were planning on launching an Airbnb listing that was specifically targeted to people that have special accessibility needs. Airbnb has functionality for that on the website. They have all sorts of filters that people can use to find the homes that have the right accessibility needs for them. And I did a little bit of research. There's a lot of filters, and what I noticed is that some of them are pretty easy to implement. Some of them are much harder to implement. So I'd love to hear, first of all, how did you come up with this idea?
Lauren, the homeowner and home builder, Lauren Wood, and I were talking about the next one that he wanted to Airbnb. There was this house that he had loved, and it's actually in my neighborhood, which is very handy. And it had been going downhill for a while. And he's lived here for a long time and loved Bloomington for a long time too. And this particular house has just always had a place in his heart, and it was hard to see it getting kind of more and more run down. And finally, he was able to buy it. He'd been trying to buy it for a while. And so he was going to remodel it, but then it takes a while to recoup those costs of remodeling to his standards, kind of. So we were going to Airbnb it, and I said, I think we need to find a new niche, because we've got beautiful, clean, relaxing covered with the other ones. So what else could we do? I looked in our market, and no one else had a home that was wheelchair accessible. And then once I started looking at wheelchair accessibility, I realized there were all of these other ways that we could make it accessible. And since he was remodeling it, completely gutting it, then that gave us all kinds of leeway to do the things that are harder to do if you're just retrofitting a place that's already has everything already in place. So that's how we were able to do some of the stuff that's harder to do. Was he just did it from scratch.
Right. And how far into that project are you now?
We are almost done. Right before lockdown came, we were just so close. I mean, like, towels were purchased, but we were still waiting for some curtains, that kind of thing. So we got our medical professional in that one, and I would say in about a month we should be completely done. So it was such a quick moment. I didn't get in and take pictures of all of the things that I need to document for Airbnb's accessibility checklist, or filters that you can use. they have you take pictures with a tape measure so people can really see. If I say that the toilet is this height, it really is this height, which I think is great, because I think some hosts might not quite understand what it means to have an accessible height bed or something, and say they do, and then if it gets there and it's not correct and they can't use it, that's terrible. So I think I've got probably 75% of those still to document. It doesn't take long. It's very easy. And then we should be pretty much ready to go.
Sweet. Yeah. And the first thing that I realized when I started looking into this topic is that as a person who doesn't have special accessibility needs, it's very hard to imagine what all those needs are and how you can accommodate to people that have have accessibility needs, right? So I looked at all the filters, and there's a lot of them. Right, there's a whole list of them, and I'll just go through the list. So Airbnb has categorized it in different categories, right? So the first one is entering the home, a step-free access, wide doorway, well-lit path to entrance, flat path to front door, and then there's getting around, wide hallway clearance, and then they even specify that you should have at least 36 inches of the width of the hallway. An elevator, of course. Bedroom should be step-free access, accessible height bed, wide doorway, wide clearance to the bed. Then the bathroom, there's a step-free access again, roll-in shower. And in my research, I noticed that that's a big one because not a lot of homes have that. I read an article by somebody who has accessibility needs, and that person was trying to find a suitable home. And a lot of homes had almost all the stuff that she was looking for, except for that roll-in shower. So that makes me think that if you do have a roll-in shower, then you can really stand out from the competition when it comes to the accessibility accommodations that you have. So accessible height toilet, wide doorway, bathtub with bath chair, wide clearance to shower and toilet. And then for the common areas, there's a step-free access, the wide entryway. And then for parking, there's disabled parking spots. So those are the filters that are there. You kind of have to dig a little bit on the Airbnb website to find it, because it's under like more filters, so it won't show up initially. But that's if you wanna create a home that's accessible for people with accessibility needs, then it's definitely, I recommend go through this list, because there's definitely things that you normally maybe wouldn't think of. And then also I think it's a good idea to look at, go on Airbnb and apply some of those filters and see which ones are pretty common and see which ones are not so common, right? Because if you can provide the filters that are not so common, if you can tick those boxes off, then you can really stand out from the crowd. So yeah, that's kind of like the research that I've done. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Well, my market is wide open right now. So just trying to check those, especially big ones. And the roll-in shower at this place is so cool. Lauren does beautiful work anyway. He's got kind of a modern aesthetic. And so we've got these beautiful concrete floors that are not slippery. And the roll-in shower is just gorgeous. Anybody's gonna love to use it. That's what I was thinking about a lot. Was I want it to be accessible and to hit all of those marks on Airbnb, but I also want it to be, I know there are a lot of ways that things can be difficult to use that are kind of less visible, so to speak, no pun intended. For example, I had guests at one of my other houses that has a lucite coffee table, and they were like, "Why are you trying to kill me? I can't see the coffee table." They have low vision, they don't see well, and the coffee table, for all intents and purposes, is completely invisible, and I had never thought about that before. So this time around, I'm thinking, okay, I know it's nice if furniture contrasts in color from in like bright, like dark and light from the floor. So if you have low vision, you can see more easily where the furniture is. I wanted to make sure that I had some chairs with very sturdy arms so that getting in and getting out for somebody who has a little difficulty with that was easier. Like, I'm trying to go so far beyond just that checklist so that anybody feels comfortable because it's beautiful and everything they need is there. But also, just in my neighborhood, you know, if your parents are visiting and they're aging and they have some of the stuff going on that comes with aging, that they feel comfortable. It's been a lot of fun to try to think, to learn to read from people who, like you said, you know, who are traveling, who have all different kinds of abilities, and see what they're missing. I'm sure that I'm going to start learning immediately from my guests what I didn't think of. But I'm trying to think of everything, and it's been really a really fun challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super excited to keep following your journey, because first of all, I think it's really cool because people with accessibility needs, they find it hard to find good places on Airbnb, right? So by focusing on that audience, you're really helping a group that doesn't have as much choice as we have. So that's a cool thing in itself. But then also, I think from a marketing perspective, I think you might do really well with your listing, because it is so rare, and especially because you're going above and beyond of what sort of the filters are on Airbnb. You're really trying to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who has accessibility needs and really understand like what's the experience for them. And we always talk about, we're not just renting out a space, we're creating experiences. And to create an experiences, you really have to understand your guests, right? And if your guest has accessibility needs, then you have to put in a little bit more effort to understand the life of that person, how that person moves around, how that person travels, to really understand like how can you cater to that person, how can you create an incredible experience for somebody with accessibility needs. And I think when you really when you really get that down, when you're really able to provide that experience, I think you're going to do really, really well, because it's so rare. And I'm sure it'd be really easy to get into like media, like on websites. I'm sure people would love to write about your listing, because everyone's going to support the cause, right? Yeah, so I interviewed in episode number 283, and you probably listened to this one, I'm sure.
Good.
I interviewed a lady who was a specialist in social impact initiatives, and she mentioned that 87% of consumers prefer to work with businesses that align with their values, right? And I think catering to a group that has limited options when it comes to travel is a value that everyone wants to get behind, right? So I think number one, I think you'll find a lot of support from in the community, but also in media with reporters and all of that. So you can really build like a little brand for yourself. But then secondly, and this is actually a question that I have for you. So first, what I was thinking is, just because you're catering to somebody with accessibility needs, that doesn't mean that other people won't want to stay with you, right? But then later I was thinking, and the reason I was thinking that is because people want to support you, right? Because they align with your values. But then later I was thinking about, those parking spots that are reserved for people with disabilities. Like, you don't want to take that spot, right? So later I was thinking, well, hold on a second. What if people are going to think like, oh, that's the only place where people with accessibility needs can go. So I don't want to get in their way. So I don't want to book it, right? So I don't know. What do you think?
Thought about that. That's hilarious. Yes. I've wondered. So what I've landed on is that a lot of people will book it not even realizing that
Yeah.
that's its special, target, I think, because it's going to look great and it's going to look welcoming and it'll have great reviews. And so people will want to stay there. So yeah, I mean, in the description, it's going to be really clear who my target is. But Yeah, that's a funny thing to think about. It's like, I'm not going to turn people away, but if it's the only one in Bloomington and somebody needs it and it's booked with somebody who doesn't need in particular those accommodations, I don't know. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one because
Yeah,
that's something I've wondered about.
that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess
Yeah.
if somebody just wants to support me, I could say, I've got these other ones that are pretty great too. You could stay in one of those.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see what you're gonna do with this listing. I'm sure it's gonna be incredible because I've looked at your other listings. I'm familiar with what you do, and I know you're doing an extremely good job on everything. You said you really set the standards high for yourself. So before we wrap this up, I would love to ask you, what kind of advice do you have for the listeners, right? Because I know you're getting amazing reviews and you're just an incredible host. So I'm sure we can learn a few things from you. So
Ooh, okay, what advice do I have for the listeners?
let's imagine this. Imagine a friend of yours contacts you and says, "Hey, Margie, I know you're an Airbnb host for a while. I know you're doing a great job. I want to get into Airbnb. What are the three most important things that I should know? What are three things that you would have done differently if you'd start over again?"
Okay, let's see. Well, I'm always tempted to start with a joke about little hairs. All of the little hairs. You have to look 5 times you can wash those sheets, you can dry them, they can be perfectly clean, but you still have to watch for those little hairs.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think the first thing is that it has to be super clean. I just, at least personally, I mean, all of us hosts go from what matters the most to us first. And if I stay in an Airbnb and it's not clean, or I just find like one spot that is clearly not clean, it makes it harder to relax, which is such a bummer. And so my number one thing is always just make it so clean so that it never occurs to a guest to not feel comfortable and at home. Like, ooh, how long has it been since this surface has been cleaned? So that's one. I think just being yourself in your interactions with the guests. When I message with people, it's just me responding, giving my own recommendations, hearing their concerns or whatever. I don't know. I think maybe when I started, I might have tried to sound like I thought I should sound, like maybe a little bit like especially professional or that sort of thing. I find that when I'm just myself, it really resonates with people, and they're just themselves with me, and we like each other a lot easier that way. And I think, let's see, I also kind of want to say something about, it's a hard balance between keeping the place immaculately clean and being really like paying so much attention to details like that, and also not taking it too personally. Like I was almost anxious to get less than a 5-star review. It's like at some point it's like I need this to happen so that I can let go of it, because I would worry about it, and you can't control people's experience. Like all you can do is be very accurate in your listing description. If there's any concern, put it in there. If you think that somebody might come and be concerned about something, my historic house has small, narrow stairways, and it's in there, and it makes weird noises. That's in there. So try to set people's expectations, provide exactly what you said you would provide, go a little above and beyond, but always under promise and over deliver. And then you have to let it go. That's a struggle for me, just to like not take things personally, because I do try really hard. And I have to remember that all I can do is just those things. And then their experience of it really doesn't have anything to do with me if I've done all of those things. It's about them. And so if it's, if they have some Not that usually my guests do. That sounds like I have guests who are complaining about it. It's not the case. I'm trying to think of a good example, but like sometimes, I don't know, just a less than enthusiastic communication or something will get me down, and I just have to take a breath and remember it's not about me.
Right. I think that's really good advice. Like a lot of hosts and students that I talk to tell me exactly the same. They're starting out and they're getting like 3, 4, 5-star reviews, and then they get their first 4-star or 3-star, and they completely freak out. They think it's the end of their business. They don't know what to do. They want to write something really aggressive back. They want to respond and defend themselves, and so I can totally relate to that. I still remember the first time that I got a guest who wasn't happy, and I literally had to sit down and calm down for like an hour or two because my blood was just, it was, I don't know, you say that, boiling?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, Margie. Well, thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited to follow your journey and see how that house is that with the accessibility needs is going to come out and how it's going to do. So definitely we're going to have to get you back on the podcast sometime
I would
and share
love
with the
that.
audience how your experience is. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in this topic. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. I'm about to learn a lot, so I'll be happy to come back when I know a lot more.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you, Margie. And for the listeners or for the viewers on YouTube, thank you so much for listening and viewing. And we'll be back next week with episode number 341. So I hope to see you then. Take care.